We are talking about people who want to be in the top 10%, not be average. You have to be willing to invest in your property. It all starts with understanding what you can truly afford and then understanding how much it's going to cost to invest in your property. And people underestimate that second part.
Hey everybody, welcome back to not STRnomics or Stronomics as we used to call it, right?
Yeah, Stronomics. No more Stronomics.
We have now rebranded Stronomics / STRnomics to Bill and Kenny's Hot Picks. That's BK Hot Picks. If you remember that, was that conference number 1, Kenny, or was that conference number 2? I think it was conference number 1, right?
It was 1.
First STR Wealth Conference, and we started Bill and Kenny's Hot Picks, which essentially ended up migrating into your property finding service. And Kenny now is the number 1 property finder in the industry, bar none. I'm the founder and creator and number 1 guy of building super properties. Kenny's now doing that as well. So we're going to kind of transition the content to this podcast. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today, Kenny, is the biggest mistakes that we see people when they invest today.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to kind of set you up and give you what I believe is the biggest one.
Okay.
I think they're underwriting using performas. You've got a performa, I've got a performa, Ryan Bakey, Mike, everybody's got a performa, but they don't know how to allocate their usable funds to purchase price and then really what that property is going to take to be able to get into that 90th percentile or really into super property level, right?
Yeah.
You see that same thing?
Absolutely. One of the key, so it starts with, in my opinion, it starts with people going to their lender, getting pre-approved, and then looking for properties at that pre-approved amount, rather than trying to figure out their purchase price based on the cash they have to invest in the property. Because that's really what we have to do today, is we have to invest in the properties. And keep in mind, like for everyone listening here, we are talking about people who want to be in the top 10%, who want to be in the top 1% in their market in performance, not be average. So if you want to be more than average, you have to be willing to invest in your property. And it all starts with understanding what you can truly afford and then understanding how much it's going to cost to invest in your property. And people underestimate that second part.
I think they're at the bare minimum, Kenny, if you want to elevate to super property level, the bare minimum is 20% of your purchase price.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, if you're buying $1 million, if you have 200 grand, let's just use the 200,000. You've used it, I've used it. $200,000. Almost all of you think, okay, I can buy $1 million property. You can't and be successful because one, you're gonna have to put in another 20 to 40 grand just to close on a 20% down.
Yep.
But the reality is you're probably looking in like Kentucky as an example, the Bourbon Trail for a $600,000 to $750,000 property maximum to be able to have the ARV budget to be able to get it into that top level.
Exactly. Yeah, I was actually going to say 700,000 is kind of that sweet spot with that 200,000 range at the maximum amount.
And I bring up Kentucky because you just did it in Kentucky, correct?
Yep. A few months.
So kind of unpack that. What did you pay for the property? How much did you spend in ARV? Kind of how did that work as you were underwriting it?
Yep. So first off, there are 3 key components to understanding what you have to invest in any property. I say there's 3. You can break out and say more, whatever. I kind of lump some together. So 3 key components for me. That is your interior furnishings and design. Your amenities is the second one. And then finally, the renovation budget. So like if you're actually going to do some updating of the property.
Construction.
Yeah, I like that.
Did you do construction in that property?
We had to replace some flooring and paint. So very cosmetic.
A little bit. People underestimate the cost of paint. I'm going to give you a really quick example. Hopefully I'm closing in 2 days on a pretty large property in Montana you're aware of, right? I got a quote. What's today? Today's Sunday, right? It was either Thursday or Friday. 90 grand just to paint my interior.
Oh, wow.
90 grand. So I said, Brea, I called my contractor. I said, we're not paying 90 grand. We have a $400,000 budget. That's almost a quarter of my budget.
Right.
We're flying there after the conference, 27th through August 1st. I said, Brea, pick your colors because we're fucking painting. We're going to spend 3 days, just me and her painting. And one of the big things we're doing is trim and walls will be the same color because that speeds everything up, saves a ton of money, right?
Yeah.
So we believe that we can get about 75% of that house done for less than $15,000, putting in our own sweat equity inside of that to stretch that budget. Now we turn that $400,000 budget. If we had to roll that $90,000 in painting into it, that shrinks it dramatically.
Yep.
So sweat equity, I think, is a big deal that people typically won't do going into their property.
Right. And if you're going in, if you're buying a property, you're a busy working professional, and you're like, I don't have time to do any of this stuff. I don't have time to just block off 3 days randomly and fly all the way to Montana and just paint for 3 days. I mean, you're going to have somebody else do that, and that's going to cost. So I think it's really important as you're looking for deals and trying to evaluate how much you have to spend, that the construction piece and understanding, all the little costs that are associated with that is important.
But there's a cheat code for that, Kenny. And the cheat code is like me and you. Right. We have those connections because really, if they want to save money to maximize their budget, you guys need to have the connections. You can go into the Facebook groups. You really want to GC it on your own and not pay a GC. Like if you're just doing flooring, if you're just doing, paint as your big construction items, you need the designer probably to do the interior design. But if you have the designer manage that, or if you have GC manage that, you're going to pay double or triple.
Easy 20%.
100%.
Easy 20%.
And in some places like Whitefish, Montana, it's like 50 to 60%.
Yep.
So, but you got to have that cheat code, those connections to be able to vet, because you can get screwed very easily by a contractor in these markets, right? To be able to get the right people. And I think that's the thing that I look at, like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I think between you and I, like people that are in our communities, they can get that in 1 or 2 degrees almost any place in the country for people that either you've used, I've used, or our members have used, our masterminds used, whatever that is. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Cool. So I'm going to shut up for a second. I want you to unpack that. So you got flooring, you got paint, and then I've seen the property and it's beautiful. You did a lot of amenities and design. So what did you pay for it? What was your ARV budget?
Okay. All right. So when we looked at the property, first off, we knew we were going to have to dump a ton of money into it to get it to where it needed to be. So before I even found the property, knowing that we had a large budget, we had to find a property where we weren't going to buy at the top end of the market. So in Kentucky, for example,
you should never buy at the top end of the market, right?
It depends on the property, depends on the budget. But
how many properties have you found for people over the last 4 years?
4 years? Probably 300 plus.
300. And how many of those have been fully turnkey at the top of the market?
Maybe 5%.
Small number. That's my point, right?
Yeah.
You can find that 5%. Most of these people can't find those 5%. And what they think is turnkey that's going to thrive is not. It's 100% wrong. What you know is turnkey, what I know is turnkey, if you or I would buy it or give it to a client, that's completely different.
Right.
And I think that's the disconnect I want them to understand, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to have that Ashita effect, that Brea effect, that super property effect to be able to really perform at that highest level. So you have that plan going in. What I heard you say is we're looking for ARV, right? I've got you said big design amenities construction budget. And I'm interested to find out, what did the property cost and what was that total budget?
He wants the numbers. All right. He doesn't want the backstory.
Well, I want the numbers, then the backstory.
All right. The numbers first. So we bought the property. This is a 9,600 square foot home listed as 9 bedrooms, 7 baths. We bought it for $1 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is on the Bourbon Trail, right?
On the Bourbon Trail. Yeah. It's 10 minutes from Buffalo Trace, which is one of the biggest distilleries.
Is that Lawrenceburg or what's the town?
Frankfurt.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we bought it for $1 million and we put in $400,000 into the property.
So 40% of purchase price goes into it.
Yes, this one. Yeah.
Awesome. So property I'm closing on in 2 days, $2.75 million. Initially budgeted $300,000, and we haven't even started yet, right? I haven't even closed. That's already been pushed to $400,000, and I think it's going to push $450 to $475.
Yep.
To do it right, and there's no way that if I put $200,000 into this property, that it will perform at the level that I want it to perform.
And that's the tricky part. That's where you have to really juggle, keep, number one, not buying a money pit, but also two, understanding that it is going to cost money to do this right. And we never want to over leverage ourselves or stretch ourselves too thin with what we currently have. Because we thought we were going to get this thing done for 300 to 325. Then it was like, oh, well, we need to replace this and we need to add this. Oh, you know what? We might as well go ahead and do this while we're doing it. And then all of a sudden we're at $400,000 in design, decor, and amenities and other little upgrades.
What percentage of that budget went into amenities alone, roughly? I know you probably don't know exactly.
Actually, I do know these numbers. So we spent $135,000 on just interior furnishings and design.
Okay. For 9,700 square feet.
Yes.
What, did you buy it furnished or unfurnished?
For the most part, unfurnished.
Okay, gotcha. So 135,000 just for beds, couches, plates, towels, all that stuff.
All that stuff.
Then what about amenities?
we're going to do some backwards math on this because I don't know the exact total, but I can get there by doing some math. So the construction side, remember, we only did painting
And flooring.
and replaced all the lighting.
And when you
inside.
say painting, are you just talking walls? Are you painting cabinets or
Walls,
what,
just
kitchen?
walls.
Just walls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't touch the kitchen. We didn't touch any of the bathrooms. The house was built in 2007, so it was relatively, like not updated, but it was relatively newer. It didn't need to be updated. Also, too, you got to think about the market. We're not going into, if we had bought in, the Smokies or Asheville or, Orlando or any of these other markets, we're going to have to update those things.
Right.
But Kentucky, you don't have to do that. The market's not there. So even
from an STR's perspective,
Exactly,
you don't have to do that.
exactly.
There's another perspective that goes along that, right? And something where I think Brea and I look at design differently than your traditional STR designers in this industry is we always position for two things. One, for STR, two, for a flip, just in case, right?
Yep.
And the flip, I want everybody to understand, is why you will never see us ever have Nerf gun rooms and slides. And I'm not going to say we'll never do a pickleball court because I'm considering that in Montana in a little bit different fashion. But the outdoor chess sets, the things that are strictly STR, because then I believe you box yourself into an STR buyer, like all the Smokies, all the Asheville stuff that's going on. Nothing wrong with that, but man, you got to unwind a lot of that stuff to make it viable to a second home buyer. And you know what happened to me in Montana last summer, right? That was purchased for a second home, basically a family compound. If I had all that other crap, I wouldn't have been able to get out of that property. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
So I think those are things that a lot of you have to consider going in. For me, not saying it's right for everybody. That's why we design to this certain level, because I see a lot of people do what you said. Ashita does it a lot, right? Brea and Ashita were in here building SCR design school a couple months ago, and Ashita did this amazing house for Tyler Kuhn in Asheville, and the kitchen's old. The bathrooms are dated, right? It's all the lipstick stuff, game room, Nerf gun rooms, outside, all that, which is great. It's perfect for STR. But man, if you try to resell that property to a non-investor, that's going to be a challenge, right? So do you consider that when you go in and are doing this?
Absolutely. We always try to look at it from a real estate investor standpoint first, and then a cash flow, STR, how do we make this thing make money? So you're absolutely right. I see this all the time in Florida, especially like Bradenton, Tampa area, and we saw this in Orlando too, where people are going in and they are amenitizing the entire space.
Kind of that Miami backyard that's now in Bradenton and
Exactly. And it's like they fill the entire backyard with amenities. They convert the garages into bedrooms, like permanently convert them. And it looks cool. It's great. And sure, it makes money. But the problem though, on the flip side is if you ever tried to sell that property, you're not selling it to for someone's primary home.
Right.
You're not going to do that. They're going to be like, I don't want all this crap that I have to maintain, and what happened to my garage?
You bring that up. When I sold that Montana property, the very first, it was written into the contract that I had to turn that back into a garage. Now, very thoughtful, I put up a temporary wall in front of the garage door. For those of you that are not putting up a wall in front of your garage doors and are not taking down the rails and the overhead lift tracks and everything, your game room looks like shit. Number one, you need to do that. You need to paint it black or something. But we do it in a way with my contractor, Sean, who's done it multiple times in that market. It only cost me like $1,400 to remove the wall, replace everything, and get it back to a garage. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I think a lot of people miss those things, especially in these bigger properties.
Yeah. Now, I will say some of them, though, some of the garages, especially the detached ones, you can kind of turn them into almost like not necessarily an event space, but when you open the doors, now you have access to the outside. Depends on the property though, but you're right. In most areas, you need to remove the
That's a big thing in Kentucky. Did you had a barn too that you had to do, or no?
No.
Barn. So that property I gave to Melissa, if you remember the one that I was under contract on a couple of years ago, and I assigned it to Melissa, that had like the 5,000 square foot barn. Right, with two huge roll-up door in the front, roll-up doors on the back. And she took exactly what Brea and I were going to do with it. and kind of opened it up to the outdoor space. And I think that's something that the designers do really, really well. We can see when you guys do your own like backyard setup versus like an Ashita backyard setup, that she has an, basically an architectural, background, and having the trails and the different textures, rock and, artificial turf and stuff like that. And that makes a huge difference in the photos and I think the marketability and the user experience. Do you agree?
Absolutely. One thing I want to add too, because everyone asked me this question, and I'm just going to get ahead of it. We did get the property reappraised. It's now worth 1.6.
Nice.
So
bought it for $1 million, put in 400, worth 1.6.
Yeah. So I mean, are we going to try to cash out refi and pull that money? No, we're not. That wasn't the purpose. That wasn't the plan. That's not the strategy we're trying to do on this particular one. The plan was, let's buy something that's undervalued. Let's inject capital into it to improve the value and make it a cash flowing asset. And then we have a little bit of cushion there. But the beautiful part about it being $1 million property and not, we didn't buy it for 1.6 million, is our debt service is much lower than what other people would be buying at the same size.
Right.
So our cash flow therefore is much higher. I only have to get this number. On this property, we only have to gross $125,000 to break even.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people don't look at it that way.
No.
Right. And those carry costs can be a killer. Right now, this Montana property, I'm looking at 4 months to get everything done.
That's pretty good.
I mean, usually we're like 2 weeks and we're up
Yeah.
and running. But one of the things that's super important for me as an investor, he's talking about this right now. He's doing it. You've done it in Texas. You've done it in the Bourbon Trail. You're doing it in New Hampshire right now. Is that correct?
Arizona.
Arizona. Got it. Where in Arizona?
Flagstaff.
That's right. Everything that Brea and I do is all based on ARV. So I'll give you that appraisal's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
You have another property, I think, what'd you say? You paid like $699 and appraised for like $900 or something. Where was that?
Oh, are you talking about the New Hampshire one that I posted?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
that was for a client.
Yeah. We had a client. They bought it for $560 and appraised for $930.
Right. And I was happy. I got my appraisal back on Friday for my 2.75, which is really my basis is 2.7, came in at 29125. But the other thing, because I've already done this across the street, this is, if you remember the highway, it's basically on the other side of the highway from my other property. I paid 2.8 and sold it for 3.4 in 7 months. Right. So I know that I already have at least that one comp. And this is the other thing I think a lot of you don't do. You are not, when your agent gets you comps, or when the appraiser's looking at comps, or your underwriter's looking at comps, they're looking at current value, right? I'm looking at what are the $3.5 to $4 million properties as comps as well for this $2.7 million property, to know, just like this is where my super grader comes in, right? To know what I need to do without going too far to be able to achieve that level of a comp from a resale standpoint.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
No.
So a lot of that decision making on what we're going to upgrade, what we're not going to upgrade, like I don't want to touch the kitchen. The cabinets are great. The countertops are great. It's got all brand new appliances, but there's a pony top that I'm going to drop. And so we're either going to have to offset the countertops or replace all the countertops. And then there's not that one jewelry piece of like hardware like that. So I'm looking at Wolf or Thermador, oven to be able to put in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that will make me $0 on STR. But for me to get that to like, if I want to surpass that 3.4 million and get to like 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, I got to update the appliances. Does that make sense? I think a lot of people don't think about that stuff, Kenny.
Right. Well, also too, when you're, hosting, especially that type of level, guests expect higher quality, higher, and sure, it's not going to make you more money, and people are going to be like, I'm going to book this place because it has, the Viking fridge or, the Sub-Zero Arctic, freezer and all this other stuff. But the reality is, from a ARV standpoint, like you mentioned, and then also guest experience.
Correct.
That's where the money comes in.
And this isn't just the $1 million property, the $2.7 million property. I do this in 1-bedroom condos all the time. We just did our PCB condo, put 90 grand, paid $435 for it, and put 90 grand in. So what is that? That's a 25% budget, right? So right in line with what we're talking about. That was a full gut for everything, where I think most people would come in, paint, flooring, and try to skimp out of there in 30 grand, and then you're not going to compete. So, and one of the things we did at that condo is we actually brought in the best muralist in the industry, same one that Ashita uses, to go in and hand paint, right? Because nobody had done that in our building. And I think that you refer to it as the moat. I refer to it it is the insulation. They both protect your investment in different ways. I think those are the big things that I see that people are making mistakes when they're investing, regardless of size and regardless of location.
Absolutely. If you can't afford $1 million property, it's fine. Just understand your what you can afford is based on your cash on hand. So you have to accept the fact that you have to invest in the property. Yes, you can leverage seller credits and concessions to help, maximize what you can put into the property cash-wise. But the reality is you still have to be willing to invest in the property. And if you don't have a lot of capital, don't go overextend yourself on the purchase price and throw it all in the purchase price. It really a lot of it has to go into the design and the amenities and construction costs if those are required. But most properties they will have something. I do not like construction projects. I hate them. I have had too many bad experiences with contractors to be like, oh yeah, let me go gut and redo this kitchen and all the bathrooms in the properties. So we look for properties where it's like already updated, but there is still something we have to do in them. Whether it's flooring, paint, obviously we have interior design and amenities and furnishings too, but there's always like that one thing, but I'm still looking for those properties. And I mean, my buy box is very particular. I won't buy anything before like 2005, because I see like a difference in style and things are a little bit older. This is all me. It's like very, very particular. And I'm looking at a certain like buy box range, and we're checking like, when was the last time the AC and the HVAC was replaced, and, hot water tanks and things like that, because those little things are necessary, but they stack up and eat a lot of your costs. And so when I'm evaluating properties and trying to find deals, that goes part of it. That startup cost.
Agreed 1,000%. And let's wrap up on this because I want to agree with you. The Montana property we're purchasing was built in 2005. Everything's great about the construction, with the exception that it has arched windows through the entire house. The doorway is arched. That's old school. That's outdated. For us to go in and like reframe and replace windows and replace doors would be about $90,000 to $100,000 just for that one. And that doesn't include painting them when they're done, all that type of stuff. So you're 100% correct. I do believe like 2003 to 2006 has some way better construction than what we get today.
Oh, absolutely.
But the windows, the look, arches, all that old school type of stuff is very hard to overcome. That's what you need to identify. Because a lot of you will go in and spend the budget that we're talking about, but you still have the outdated, like you're doing lighting, we're replacing every light in this house because it's outdated. And people see those old fans, they see the old lamps, they see those old things, and they immediately think it's an outdated house. You can have the updated furniture, cool brand new, chairs like this, murals, whatever. But when they see that stuff, or like the hardware, Kenny, and I'm not even talking about like cabinet hardware and bathroom hardware, like even just, the hangers on the doors that people don't spend the $15 to replace that hardware. People notice that stuff and it shows in your photos too.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, hopefully you like the new content we're talking about today. We've got more episodes coming down the pipeline. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and join us on the next episode of BK Hot Picks.
We'll see you on the next one.